On America's West Coast, the dream has turned into a nightmare. In San Jose, California, the median home now costs more than $1.5 million, the highest of any large city in the nation, and nearly 12 times higher than the local median income. That is not a housing market. That is a wall shutting out an entire generation. In Los Angeles, renters must now earn more than $118,000 a year just to keep a modest apartment. Yet the typical household makes far less, trapping families in a cycle of debt, eviction, and despair. And in San Diego, the typical home has surged to $980,000, demanding an income of nearly $250,000 just to qualify for a mortgage. From California to Oregon to Washington, West Coast cities are collapsing under record housing costs. Families are fleeing. Homelessness is exploding. Communities are hollowing out before our eyes. Tonight, we count down the 10 West Coast cities unraveling the fastest. And when we reach number 1, the most shocking collapse will not be the city you expect: Stockton, California. On the surface, this Central Valley city looks like a place of opportunity, a halfway point between the Bay Area and the state capital. But peel back the facade, and Stockton is drowning under the same tidal wave of housing costs that is crushing the rest of the West Coast. The median home in Stockton now stands at roughly $431,500. That number may look modest compared to San Jose or San Francisco, but for local families, it is devastating. Why? Because the median household income in San Joaquin County is barely $87,000 per year. That means buying a typical home here now requires more than 5 times the average annual income, pushing homeownership out of reach for most residents. Even rental housing offers little relief. The average 2-bedroom apartment in Stockton now rents for about $1,300 per month. For a household earning the county's median income of roughly $87,000 a year, that still eats up close to 20% of gross income, and far more for the thousands of families earning below the median. And the pressure is not just financial, it is structural. Foreclosure data from mid-2025 shows Stockton with one of the highest foreclosure rates in the Central Valley, as homeowners buckle under mortgages that simply cannot be sustained. Add to that a local poverty rate hovering near 15%, and Stockton's fragile economic base is stretched to its breaking point. The result is an exodus. Census migration data shows families leaving Stockton at increasing rates, many heading east in search of cheaper housing in Nevada or Idaho. Yet, even as people flee, demand remains, driven by Bay Area spillover, residents priced out of San Francisco and San Jose, who see Stockton as their last chance to own property in California. This inflow of desperate buyers keeps prices artificially high, while longtime locals get squeezed out of their own neighborhoods. Stockton's story is a warning. When a city's housing market is driven more by external pressure than by local wages, collapse is inevitable. Stockton may not yet have the sky-high million-dollar medians of the coast, but for the people who live here, the pain is every bit as real. And if you think Stockton's housing crisis is bad, wait until you see what's happening just down the valley. The next city on our list is facing a price surge so steep, even families with 6-figure incomes are being forced to leave in droves. Riverside, California, the heart of the Inland Empire. For decades, this sprawling region east of Los Angeles was considered the affordable alternative, the last refuge for working-class families priced out of the coast. But today, even Riverside is collapsing under record housing costs. The typical home value here now sits around $625,000 as of August 2025. Just 5 years ago, the median was nearly $200,000 lower. The surge has been fueled not by local wages, but by demand from Los Angeles, commuters, and spillover migration from Orange County. The problem? The median household income in Riverside County is only about $93,000 per year, meaning a typical home costs more than 6.5 times what the average family earns. Rents tell a similar story. 2-bedroom apartments average nearly $2,100 per month, up more than 20% since 2020. For a county where more than half of renters already spend over 30% of their income on housing, this is an affordability crisis with no end in sight. Foreclosure activity has also begun to creep back. Riverside was among the top California metros for new foreclosure filings in mid-2025, with hundreds of households at risk of losing their homes. This echoes the painful memories of the 2008 housing crash, when the Inland Empire was ground zero for foreclosures statewide. Meanwhile, homelessness has climbed sharply. Recent county reports estimate that more than 4,000 residents in Riverside County are now without stable housing, a number that has grown every year since the pandemic. With wages lagging behind costs, families that once moved here for stability are now finding themselves one rent hike away from the streets. The collapse is not just economic, it is cultural. Riverside was once the escape valve for Angelenos, looking for space and affordability. Now, even this last refuge has been priced beyond reach. The squeeze has left longtime locals with nowhere else to go, and it has exposed the cruel reality. If Riverside is no longer affordable, what city in California truly is? And if you think Riverside is strained, wait until you see what's happening farther north. The next city on our list has been hit by both rising housing costs and a surge of foreclosures. A 1-2 punch that is leaving entire neighborhoods on the brink of collapse. Sacramento, California. The state capital was once seen as a safer, more affordable alternative to the Bay Area. For generations, families moved here for stability, government jobs, and suburban space. But today, Sacramento is cracking under the same pressures, tearing through the West Coast housing market. As of August 2025, the median home value in Sacramento sits at roughly $476,000. That is up nearly 60% since 2015, far outpacing wage growth. The median household income in Sacramento County is only about $90,000 per year, which means a typical home now costs more than 5 times the average annual income. Renters face the same impossible math. 2-bedroom apartments in Sacramento average about $1,900 per month, representing an increase of more than 25% in just 5 years. For thousands of households, that monthly rent consumes well over 1/3 of their paychecks, leaving little left for food, healthcare, or savings. Even more alarming are the foreclosure numbers. Sacramento recorded more than 100 foreclosure filings in June 2025 alone. Analysts warn that as mortgage rates remain elevated, foreclosure activity here could climb much higher by the end of the year, echoing the devastation of the 2008 crash. The strain is visible on the streets. Sacramento's most recent homeless count identified over 6,000 residents without permanent shelter, one of the highest per capita homelessness rates in the nation. Tents now line downtown corridors, and shelters report that rising rent and eviction filings are the leading causes of displacement. For Sacramento, the housing crisis strikes at its very identity. Once promoted as the last affordable big city in California, it has lost that reputation. Young professionals who once saw Sacramento as a stepping stone are leaving, while longtime families are uprooted after decades in the capital region. The hollowing out of Sacramento is not about glamour or speculation. It is about the slow suffocation of a middle-class city by costs it was never built to sustain. And if you think Sacramento's numbers are bleak, just wait until we reach the next city. There, the housing market has turned into a pressure cooker, with families pushed so far to the edge that foreclosures are piling up at a speed not seen since the financial crisis. Portland, Oregon. For years, it was branded as one of America's most livable cities, a magnet for young professionals, remote workers, and retirees seeking culture with affordability. But that image has cracked. Today, Portland is caught in a spiral where housing costs collide with stagnant incomes, driving families out and leaving the city frayed at its edges. The typical home in Portland is valued at about $525,000. A decade ago, that figure was nearly half. Yet the median household income in Multnomah County is only around $86,000 a year. That means the cost of a home here now sits at more than 5.5 times the average annual income, a level that financial analysts consistently warn is unsustainable. Rents offer no refuge. The average 2-bedroom apartment in Portland now leases for nearly $1,700 per month, up more than 30% since 2020. For tens of thousands of renters, that means well over 1/3 of household income disappearing into housing costs. The strain has spilled into the streets. Portland's most recent point-in-time count identified more than 6,300 people experiencing homelessness, one of the highest per capita rates of any major U.S. metro. Shelters are overwhelmed, and tent encampments now stretch along freeways, riversides, and under bridges, once seen as symbols of the city's charm. Foreclosure activity is also ticking upward. foreclosure filings in the Portland metro climbing through mid-2025 as interest rates keep buyers locked out and overstretched homeowners struggle to refinance. Neighborhoods that once symbolized Portland's growth, East Portland and Gresham in particular, are now flashing warning signs of instability. What makes Portland unique is the tension between its identity and its reality. This was a city celebrated for accessibility, public transit, and progressive ideals. Yet rising housing costs have eroded that foundation, leaving many longtime residents disillusioned. Population growth has slowed, and IRS migration data confirms a steady outflow of households toward cheaper states like Idaho and Montana. Portland's unraveling is not sudden. It is the result of years of demand colliding with limited supply and policy deadlock. The city that once prided itself on balance now finds itself on the edge of collapse, where affordability is a memory and displacement is the new normal. And if you think Portland's decline is unsettling, wait until we move farther north. The next city is facing a housing crunch so severe that even households earning well into six figures are being pushed out, fueling a homelessness surge unlike anything the Pacific Northwest has seen before. Seattle, Washington. The city that gave birth to global tech giants and fueled the Pacific Northwest boom is now straining under a housing market that even six-figure incomes can't tame. The Emerald City was once a beacon of growth and innovation. Today, it's a case study in what happens when prosperity drives prices far beyond the reach of its own people. The median home value in Seattle is about $900,000. Just a decade ago, the typical home cost less than half that amount. Meanwhile, the median household income in King County is roughly $122,000 per year, which still leaves the average home priced at more than 8 times the local salary. That ratio makes Seattle one of the least affordable housing markets in the country. Renters have not been spared. The average 2-bedroom apartment in Seattle now rents for nearly $2,800 per month. For households making less than 6 figures, that monthly payment devours half their paycheck, forcing many to double up, downsize, or leave altogether. The fallout is visible in the city's homelessness crisis. Washington's official January 2025 count found nearly 159,000 people statewide without stable housing, a 2% increase from the previous year. Seattle, as the state's largest metro, accounts for the majority of that surge. Encampments line greenbelts, freeway underpasses, and public parks, a stark reminder of the widening gap between the city's tech wealth and its struggling families. Foreclosure activity has also begun to reappear. Seattle is among the metros where delinquency and foreclosure filings rose in mid-2025, a troubling signal that even higher earners are reaching their limits under elevated interest rates. This is particularly striking, given that King County was considered one of the safest markets during the last housing crash. Seattle's unraveling is not about lack of demand. It is about a housing system breaking under its own success. The very industries that once drew talent here have helped push costs so high that many of those same workers can no longer afford to stay. Thousands of residents have already left Washington for cheaper states like Arizona and Texas. Seattle is a warning to every booming city in America. Growth without affordability is not progress. It is collapse by another name. And if Seattle feels like a crisis, wait until we turn south. The next city on our list has seen housing costs soar while incomes stagnate, creating a foreclosure wave that threatens to undo years of fragile recovery. San Francisco, California. For decades, it was the crown jewel of the West Coast, a city where ambition and opportunity shaped the skyline. But today, San Francisco is unraveling under housing costs that no longer make sense, even to the people who once believed the sacrifice was worth it. The median home value in San Francisco is about $1.2 million. That figure is nearly double what it was just 15 years ago. Meanwhile, the median household income in the city stands around $140,000 per year. That may sound high, but it still leaves the average home priced at nearly 10 times the annual income, one of the steepest affordability gaps in the entire nation. Renters are equally trapped. The average 2-bedroom apartment in San Francisco now leases for more than $3,500 per month, according to regional housing data. For middle-income families, that single payment consumes over 1/3 of monthly earnings, forcing many to downsize, take on roommates, or leave the city altogether. Population data confirms that this exodus is already happening. Between July 2023 and July 2024, San Francisco lost more than 1,000 residents, continuing a downward trend that began earlier in the decade. While the loss may sound modest, it comes on top of years of sustained outmigration, leaving neighborhoods hollowed out as families choose to start over in more affordable parts of the country. Foreclosure activity, once thought unthinkable in one of the most desirable real estate markets in the world, is also returning. There was an increase in foreclosure filings across the Bay Area in mid-2025, with San Francisco among the hardest hit. Elevated mortgage rates, combined with already record-breaking housing costs, are creating a perfect storm for distressed sales. What makes San Francisco's collapse distinct is the erosion of confidence. For decades, people justified the expense by clinging to the city's reputation as a place worth paying for. That illusion is breaking. Now, even households earning six figures are finding that the math no longer works. When the price of a modest home demands nearly a decade's worth of income, belief itself begins to collapse. San Francisco is a warning that even the most iconic cities are not immune to unsustainable housing costs. And if you think San Francisco is staggering, wait until you see the next city on this list. There, the struggle is not only about sky-high home values, it is about entire neighborhoods where affordability has collapsed so completely that families are leaving faster than houses can be listed. San Jose, California. At the southern end of the Bay Area, this city was once considered the engine of opportunity. Today, it carries the heaviest housing burden in the entire United States, a burden that has pushed ordinary families far past the breaking point. The median home value in San Jose has reached roughly $1.5 million. That makes it the most expensive major housing market in the nation. Local incomes are higher than most places. But even here, the median household brings in only about $153,000 per year. That leaves the cost of a typical home at more than 9 times the average salary. Financial experts often warn that anything above 4 times income is unsustainable. San Jose is more than double that threshold. The rental market offers little escape. 2-bedroom apartments here now average about $3,100 per month. For families earning the median, that still consumes nearly a quarter of monthly income, while lower earners are often forced into overcrowded conditions or extended commutes from distant suburbs. Foreclosure data underscores how fragile the situation has become. San Jose and surrounding communities saw a marked increase in foreclosure filings through mid-2025, a signal that even high-income households are unable to withstand today's mortgage rates, combined with record purchase prices. Meanwhile, population patterns are shifting. Migration data shows that Santa Clara County has recorded net domestic outflows for several years in a row, with thousands of households leaving annually. Many are relocating to states where housing costs are less punishing, often trading smaller homes in California for larger properties elsewhere at a fraction of the price. What makes San Jose's crisis distinct is the way it strips the concept of homeownership down to a privilege for only the very few. In other cities, high costs are shocking. In San Jose, they are crushing. The idea of building a stable family life here has become nearly impossible, as the barrier to entry climbs higher with each passing year. San Jose is not just unaffordable, it is unreachable. A city where the dream of owning a modest home now requires an income most Americans will never see in their lifetime. And if San Jose feels impossible, the next city reveals something even more staggering: a West Coast hub where record prices, rising debt, and economic fragility are colliding to create a housing collapse unlike any other. Los Angeles, California. The nation's second largest city has always been a place of contrasts: wealth and poverty, ambition and struggle. But today, it is defined by a housing market that has locked out much of its population. Nowhere else does the gap between aspiration and reality feel so wide. The median home value in Los Angeles stands at roughly $931,000. A decade ago, the figure was hundreds of thousands lower. Yet the median household income in Los Angeles County is only about $90,000 per year. That leaves the cost of a typical home at more than 12 times the average income, one of the steepest affordability gaps in the country. Renters, who make up the majority of households in Los Angeles, face an equally dire situation. Data from mid-2025 shows that a typical 2-bedroom apartment now rents for nearly $3,000 per month. To afford that without being considered cost-burdened would require an annual income of about $118,000. Few families meet that threshold. The pressure is showing in eviction numbers. County court filings reveal that tens of thousands of households faced eviction proceedings in the past year, a sharp increase compared to pre-pandemic levels. Rising rents, stagnant wages, and inflation have combined to push families into constant housing insecurity. Homelessness has become one of the most visible consequences. Los Angeles County's official 2025 homeless count identified more than 72,000 people without stable shelter. Entire neighborhoods are now surrounded by tents, and many families who lose their homes to eviction or foreclosure end up joining this swelling population. At the same time, out-migration is accelerating. Census data shows that Los Angeles County has lost hundreds of thousands of residents since 2020, with many moving inland or out of state altogether. Those departures are not just statistics. They represent families, workers, and taxpayers who no longer see a future in one of the country's most famous cities. What makes Los Angeles unique is the scale of its paradox. This is a city that produces immense wealth, yet most of its residents cannot afford a modest home or apartment. Housing here has become less about stability and more about survival, with ordinary families caught in a relentless squeeze. And if Los Angeles feels severe, the next city on our list reveals an even sharper contradiction, where housing costs have soared so high that even six-figure earners find themselves forced to leave. San Diego, California. This coastal city has long been known for its sunshine and quality of life, but beneath the postcard image is one of the most punishing housing markets in America. For families trying to plant roots here, the cost of shelter has turned into an impossible barrier. The median home value in San Diego is roughly $958,000. That is nearly double what it was just 15 years ago. Yet the median household income in San Diego County is only about $103,000 per year. That leaves the cost of a typical home at more than 9 times the average income, far beyond any standard of affordability. Renters face the same relentless squeeze. A 2-bedroom rental now averages nearly $2,400 per month. For a family earning the median income, that one payment alone consumes a third of monthly earnings. And for the many households earning less, it pushes them to the brink. The strain is reflected in housing insecurity. County data shows that more than 36,000 households are severely cost-burdened, spending over half of their income on rent. That level of stress leaves little money for food, healthcare, or savings, and it sets the stage for widespread displacement when any financial shock occurs. Homelessness is also rising. The region's 2025 count found more than 10,000 people without stable housing, an increase from the year before. Shelters are overwhelmed, and neighborhoods from downtown to the suburbs are grappling with the visible fallout of an affordability crisis that shows no sign of slowing. San Diego's challenge is compounded by geography. Wedged between the Pacific Ocean and inland mountains, there is little room to expand outward. With demand rising and supply constrained, prices are pushed higher every year, even as more families pack up and leave. Population growth has slowed to a crawl, and IRS migration data confirms that thousands of households have already moved east in search of affordable shelter. What makes San Diego's situation distinct is the way it erodes the very promise of its lifestyle. Sunshine and ocean views mean little when the cost of living forces families into debt, displacement, or departure. The city once marketed as a paradise is becoming a place people can no longer hold on to. And if San Diego feels like the edge of affordability, wait until we reach number 1. The final city on our list has become the ultimate symbol of collapse, where record housing costs are colliding with economic instability to create a crisis deeper than anywhere else on the West Coast. Oakland, California. For generations, this city was the place where families priced out of San Francisco could still find a home, a community, and a future. But today, Oakland has become the epicenter of California's housing collapse, where costs and instability have collided harder than anywhere else on the West Coast. The median home value in Oakland is about $813,000. 10 years ago, that number was closer to $400,000. Prices have more than doubled, yet the median household income in Alameda County is around $129,000 per year. That leaves the cost of a typical home at more than 8 times the average annual income, a gap that shuts out the very residents who once saw Oakland as their last refuge. Renters face an equally severe burden. A 2-bedroom apartment in Oakland now averages nearly $2,700 per month. For families making less than the median, this consumes well over half of their paychecks. Thousands of households are forced to live doubled up, take on multiple jobs, or leave the city altogether. Displacement has become a defining feature of Oakland's housing market. Census data shows that Alameda County has lost tens of thousands of long-term residents since 2020, many relocating inland or out of state. At the same time, demand from higher-income newcomers keeps rents high, creating a cycle where original communities are replaced at a staggering pace. The fallout is stark on the streets. Oakland's 2025 homeless count identified more than 6,000 residents without permanent housing, one of the highest per capita rates of any major U.S. city. Encampments now stretch along major corridors, and local reports note that rent increases and evictions remain the leading causes of new homelessness. Foreclosure activity is also rising. There have been hundreds of new filings across Alameda County in the summer of 2025, a troubling echo of the 2008 housing crash. With mortgage rates elevated and home prices still far beyond sustainable levels, many families are caught in an impossible bind. What makes Oakland unique is the speed of its unraveling. In just a single generation, the city has shifted from a place of opportunity to one of the least stable housing markets in America. Families who once saw Oakland as their safety valve now see it as unlivable. Oakland's collapse is more than a housing story. It is a symbol of how entire cities can be pushed past the point of recovery. And as we close this countdown, the real question is not whether these cities can survive, but whether America itself can endure a future where shelter has become the greatest threat to stability. The story of the West Coast is not just about individual cities. It is about the unraveling of an entire region once seen as the frontier of American opportunity. From Stockton to Oakland, families are being priced out, forced out, and left out of a housing market that no longer serves its people. When homes cost nearly 10 times what the average family earns, when rents consume half a paycheck, and when thousands are sleeping in tents under freeways, the warning signs are impossible to ignore. This is not simply a California problem. It is not only about Oregon or Washington. It is a glimpse into the future of America if the foundations of housing continue to collapse. The real question is not whether these cities can survive, but whether the nation itself can withstand a future where shelter has become the greatest threat to stability. If you want to understand where America is headed next, subscribe and join us. Because what we reveal in the next video may determine where you live and whether you can afford to stay.